Welcome to Untying the Knot, your go-to podcast for all things divorce. We're here to share stories and strategies to help you untangle the knots in your divorce so you can navigate it with confidence and clarity and build the life you desire. I'm your host, Lisa Gu. In this first episode, fellow coach Lauren Ross shares her divorce transformation journey and how her heart-centered approach brought her clarity and closure. Joining us today is a very good friend of mine and our special guest, Lauren Ross, founder of transformational heart-centered life coaching. So after spending more than 30 years in corporate as a servant leader, guiding people through personal and professional transformations, Lauren recently started her new venture as a life coach. In her coaching, Lauren takes a curated and holistic wellness approach, including breath work, Reiki meditation, and food psychology to support women facing separation and divorce in gaining clarity and creating a life they love. Lauren and I met in our coaching practice and program, and today she's joining me to share her divorce journey specifically. So hi, Lauren.
Hi there. Thank you so much for just creating this circle here of support and services. And I'm really glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. You're always so gracious, and I really appreciate that. So we're gonna dive in, and let's start here and see where it goes. So my first invitation is if you're open to share and tell us about your divorce journey, when it started and how it came about, and how long were you married?
Okay. To begin with, I want to just make sure that I lay the groundwork that I am not an advocate of separations or divorces. Mm-hmm. If anything, I'm a strong advocate of helping, whether it was my former employees or friends. I think being in limbo or a state of indecisiveness is like purgatory. Not making a decision is a decision in itself, but when you're when you don't have all the clarity, I think it just gets very muddied. So the other thing is that I take commitment really seriously. I was in my role for my corporate job for over 30 years. That's kind of like unheard of. But the cool thing about that was that there was a variety of different things, different positions in different locations. And I was married legally for over 30 years. And I was always very interested in personal development. And I started my holistic journey and learning probably about over 15 years ago. And I think that when you go through and one partner is interested in personal development and the other individual is, the paths did not converge, if you will. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like others, I had kids. We both had beautiful kids. I didn't stay in the marriage because of the kids. We really wanted to work towards that. And more, it just kind of became clearer to me that it would probably take a course of miracles, if you will, for things to work out and for us to come back together. It wasn't until the 11th hour where my now ex decided to go to couple counseling. And at that point it was, and I've asked for couple counseling for my birthdays, for our anniversaries and things like that, but it never happened until the very 11th hour. And And at that point, I
What does
think
that mean? What does
um,
the 11th hour
and I was
mean?
like when I was done
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
marriage, like, yeah.
yeah.
So, and I was really upfront. I said, we've been down this path for so long that I don't know if even couple counseling is going to turn things around. I would prefer that we go to couple counseling so that you have issues that you need to work with. I have my own issues, but don't just go to save the marriage. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to be an if then and oh, if we do this, our marriage we saved or we'd stay together. Things would
Mm-hmm.
need to change. So that was pretty much how things got started. And so when did I decide? I think I asked for couple counseling um, probably about my 20th anniversary.
So that
So
was more than
10,
10
it was
years
roughly about
ago
10 years.
before you,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
So it was
mm-hmm,
roughly about 10 years. And then I know I played a role in things
mm-hmm,
not working out. Um, I started to travel more frequently in my job. And when you have things that kind of keep you occupied, it
mm-hmm,
was status quo could also be deadly, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
so that was how I kept myself busy, and we had our own interests. And like I said, it didn't merge to the extent of it was going to be a um, a strong partnership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was it, and it was kind of an easy situation, right? When you're busy with something, and work is always a really great excuse because it seems to be purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
So work was his job was somewhat busy, and he's a techie, so self-development or self personal development for him is reading technical books. Very
Mm-hmm.
smart man, self-taught in a lot of things. And my personal development is, let's find out our five languages of love. You know?
It's like heart to heart development. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
I think it just became more and more evident that we're different. Our paths we're
Mm-hmm.
going down a very different path. And I think that one of the things where I kept asking myself, what's the reason for staying together?
Mm-hmm.
And I continued with my one-on-one counseling and therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that when you're not able to come up with some of the answers, where is this a person that I would want and be proud of for my kids to be married to? And so
Mm-hmm.
whatever the answer is, that was the telling point for me. It was time that we were
Mm-hmm.
probably better as co-parenting, versus being married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's interesting. In the sense that sometimes our work we became married to our work. There is that point, but it also sounds like I know a little bit about your story because we chatted about it
Mhm.
last year. I think you mentioned that there was a long period of time where you had this thought or this doubt about the longevity or your commitment about the marriage, but it was a long time coming until you decide, okay, sounds like there is a awakening moment when you said, now this is not going to work. So tell us a little bit more about that period of where you said you were in limbo and
Mhm.
making that big decision because it's a huge decision. And
Yeah.
it sounds like it's more than 10 years when you ask for marriage counseling and the other party didn't think it's important while you were continuing investing in your own journey of development. So how was that journey like?
Um, in looking back, when you do personal development, it's hard, tough work on yourself. So once again, the effort and the energy I put into it so that I can find out who I am
Mhm,
and and be able to show up the best version of myself, if you will. And so that was a keen interest of mine because I didn't like being in limbo. I, one of the things that was kind of an awakening call was I was nursing my husband at that point. He had a couple of operations, and then um, my body crashed,
mm,
and he wasn't there for me.
mm, mhm,
I don't think he knew I was sick,
mhm,
and I was as I was actually off work. I was on a medical leave, so and there wasn't much conversation. I just thought that was so interesting. Like, this is the person I'm married to, and there's no offer of tea. Can I bring you some tea if you're not
mm,
feeling well? So it was just very bizarre. And I was, um, and granted, I there was a lot of self-blame. Um, I kept on saying, "Gosh, I must be a really, terrible wife for,
mm,
for my husband not wanting to uh, take care of me when
mhm,
I'm sick." And and during that moment of recovery, I just had this dream that, my goodness, if my significant other that I'm
mm.
married to isn't able to take care of me, I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
who do I turn to?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
What are
was
you
a
in this for? Yeah.
exactly, it was a dream, and then I was speechless. It was just
Mm,
the oddest thing. And what what made it difficult was that he's also a extreme introvert. So he didn't really have any outside connections or community. And and then there's an age difference between us of just 9 years. And when he was going through his surgeries, which were it was hernia operations, um, he kept on telling me that his other ailments was going to impair him so much, where basically it was kind of like medical hostage. It was I
mhm.
was felt like I was in this emotional hostage of here's what's wrong with me. You need to stay and basically carry out your vows. That was the other thing, where if we all read our vows word for word, I don't know if there's very many people that would stay in a marriage and still be happy and satisfied in the marriage. Those are really tough vows to live up to by two people. And
And for
so,
a long period of time
and
as
then,
you both evolve and yeah, without
yeah,
checking in with each other um again and again frequently, as
right.
time changes and you change. Yeah, absolutely. Marriage is hard.
Yeah.
Marriage is hard. Yeah.
And so, so I had the hostage. I don't know what else to call it, but I had that going on. I felt guilt, um, I
Hmm.
and self blame, um, and then I felt sorry for him as well because he didn't have anyone.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, I felt an incredible amount of pressure because
Hmm.
I was kind of like everything to him.
Yeah.
That's why I always encourage him. please seek a counselor. That could be your buddy system, if anything. You need to unload and talk to someone. So the question that I kept asking myself, have I done everything I can? Did I give
Mm-hmm.
it my all?
Mm-hmm.
And when the question came up about, is this a life partner that I would be proud of for my kids to, and I didn't get a divine yes to that.
Yeah.
And um, and when it was time to tell my kids, our kids are very smart. They pick up on things. They may not tell us, but they pick up on things. And one of my kids says, "Mom, I don't know how long. I don't know how you stayed in the marriage. I don't know why you waited so long."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a culmination of things. So when you're when your head feels like, okay, you're ready to make a decision, but if your heart and soul isn't there, it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
take that first step.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and I also think timing is everything. I truly believe that I am always protected and guided.
Yeah.
There was a lesson for me, in this experience. And and I and the other thing is that there are very few people that I've spoken to where when they've made the decision to part ways, they don't regret it. They feel like they've made the right choices, just based
Mm.
upon, Monday morning quarterback, if you will. It's like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
This was the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's a living Groundhog Day and over again for so long, and it's fun. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it would be very helpful. Not that if you're in this situation, should I stay or should I go, that you should choose to leave. It really depends. But I think um a lot of people would find really helpful to hearing how you make your decision. It sounds like more and more you got clear that what you were looking for is that um, mutual, committed, I'm in this partnership with you, right? We should be in service to each other while you were providing that service. It's more one-sided. And then being sick yourself, and that really opened your eyes to be like, oh, I'm not receiving. I wasn't receiving anything. Coupled with all of the personal development work you've reached to, and I love when you said, our head may know it, or it has to align with our heart. So it must be a tough decision. I mean, it can't be easy to say, I'm leaving a 30 years of marriage. So you talked about you were learning the lessons. So what would you say is the biggest lesson you learned in making that decision of leaving the marriage?
Uh, the biggest lesson,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest lesson is find out who you are and what you want.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, um, I'm the youngest of 8 kids, and I think
I
that,
didn't know that.
yeah, I think that there's probably some sort of a belief that, oh, you're the youngest, so you're probably spoiled and this and that. But my journey was such that I was a pleaser. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I tend to please my brothers and sisters, and my mom is a saint, by the way. And I
Mm-hmm.
walked in her footstep in a way where she gave, and that was a role model. And so that's why I wanted to go through the self-development, so I can be assured of who I am, because I felt like I was living other identities by pleasing my family, my large family, if you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
knowing who you are and what you want, that sounds like a an easy decision, but depending on your upbringing, that may or may not be. And then, we were raised to not be selfish. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
if you want that, if you're calling attention to yourself. So that was my journey. And I think that based upon just the um, the evolution of seeing all the patterns of obedience,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that was,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I think that was the time factor. I was a rebel when I was younger. I mean, but there was something there where I just said, I cannot make my mom unhappy by going against her word. Know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was too painful for me to see her in pain. But at the end of the day, not knowing who you are, and that's the other things. I did a lot of forgiveness work because I didn't know who I was. So therefore, I felt like I led this man down this marriage and I didn't know who
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we are all adults and we're making consensual decision. I'm not responsible for his choices. I can only be
Mm-hmm.
responsible for mine. And
Mm-hmm.
I owned up to it. I
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I still remember the day when I brought it up to him. I do believe that that separation does serve a purpose. So I do believe that that helps both parties on getting a clear picture, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
apart. And that was my first step, was that I said that, I think we need a separation so we can really kind of decipher this. But yeah, so knowing who you are, I think is for me, and as I talk to others, is probably top choice there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a tough journey and to really figure that out because something that I can totally resonate just because being a giver and also growing up in that kind of a culture. I'm from China, so it's overwhelmingly so you self is not a concept that exists in the larger society. It's always other, right? Others first. So that definitely carries into my marriage as well. And just giving, giving, giving to a degree of harming myself without realizing that. And then even after the divorce, realizing, wow, I lost myself playing someone's wife, that role, that identity, or the mom, but where is that um, 6-year-old Lisa, who maybe be a, a little bit rebellion, and that like fun and genuine and authentic, and to get in touch with that Lisa takes a long time because it's
Yep.
get lost. So, um, and then how did the divorce come about, the whole legal process?
Yeah. Uh, so when I was going through my therapy, mm, uh, and I voiced that I was I need to change this relationship, she referred me to a divorce attorney.
Hmm.
And so I would say that the next step, the next big step in this process is being prepared. And when I say
Hmm.
being prepared, I don't mean to be so strategic that you're manipulating every step of the way.
Hmm.
Um, it's being prepared for, again, who you are, who I am, how I'm going
Yeah.
to react to things, and how I will respond to my husband's reactions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I met with the attorney, and my goal from that get-go is to use the help of the attorney as a mediator
Mm-hmm.
and to help with the paperwork and the process,
Mm-hmm.
not so much to litigate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the state of California, where I'm at, I could have started out with a mediator, but if things went ugly, and
Mm-hmm.
then if it was going to go to litigation, I couldn't use my mediator to litigate for me. I would have to
Yeah.
start all over again.
Yeah.
So, so that's so I started with a attorney, and that's how I approached the conversation with my husband at the time. I said, "We work so hard for our money. I don't want to pay lawyer fees, court fees. I want to use this person to mediate and to just make sure paperwork is done correctly and to be able to hold on to as much of the money as we can between the
Yeah.
two of us."
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, we are really lucky. There's abundance for you and for me.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to work things out in the most amicable way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was how I started the conversation.
Mm-hmm. I like
Uh,
to challenge you though. You said, not being, you said being prepared, but it's not, I agree, not on the not being manipulate uh, part, but
yeah,
you were very strategic as well because you thought you did your research, right? You did your research, whether it's mediator or lawyer. However, you're right. If you start over again, it would be a new ordeal to start with the lawyer. So you were very strategic and very, very at the beginning, and you did your homework, and you had the tough conversation, and you laid out your goal and to protect the mutual benefits at the very beginning. I mean, in a lot of cases, the other party may not collaborate. In a lot of clients' case, I see, but you were very strategic, and that's, I think, being part of being prepared is do your homework, get yourself ready.
yeah. You know, I felt like I was coming from a heart-centered approach. My therapist introduced me to the attorney. It was the attorney who shared that peace of mind with me.
Approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So my heart-centered approach has always been, I want this to be amicable. And I even said all these words to my husband at the time. I said, I truly do believe that two people can be better off as friends. I still believe that we can come together and celebrate holidays with the kids together as co-parenting. I believe all of that, and I look forward to that, and I hope that that's the way. So I said all of those things, um, and I so I some may see it as strategic, some may felt I was just guided. That was
Mm-hmm.
that was my heart the whole entire time. you know um and there were very good characteristics about my ex. He's a hard worker. He doesn't hang out and go drinking with the guys. He is responsible. He provided for the family, had all those types of things. However, I think with his upbringing, he wanted to be a better dad than his own father. But things evolve, things change. I mean, what used to be the standard here, this is now the standard, if you will, right? I mean, just there's
Mm-hmm.
more
Yeah,
demand.
yeah.
There's more,
Yeah. What are the roles that a dad
yeah,
plays and
right.
have evolved? It's not
Yeah,
just bring the money home, and it's
yep.
much more than that. Like in the modern society. So it sounds like the legal process went fairly amicable, also understandably that you have grown-up children, if I understand right.
Mhm.
So it's really just division of assets, and his benefits are in there. So I was curious, how did he react when you broke the news to him that you want a divorce? How did that go?
it didn't go well. He was very hurt because his issues were abandonment. I mean,
Mm,
it was it was and it was being replayed in his mind when his parents divorced and how his mom left the family household. All of this was like regurgitating in his head, which is one of the reasons why I asked him to consider going through counseling so he can heal. You
mm,
know,
mhm,
he he felt his pain, but he also numbed it with
mm, mhm,
substance. Okay.
mhm,
So so those I had um I had medical issues to that was involved in the marriage. Then we had substance abuse that was in the marriage. Um Also, there was a potential weapon scenario. I mean, it was
okay.
it 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 could have gotten really volatile, and he had a very bad temper. He went from
Yeah.
0 to 100 very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So so that was the part where I I wanted to be prepared so that if there was any time of a safety situation.
Violence. Yep. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, so kids being grown up, I think that there's different set of challenges in that
Mm, yeah.
they've seen this
Absolutely. Yeah.
dysfunctional family for a
Mm-hmm.
good period of time. So that's what they're used to, just like me. I went through that type of, trauma, if you will. So, but luckily, I introduced both of my kids to counselors and
Yeah.
therapy
Yeah.
um, when they were in middle school,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
school is tough. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the kids
Yeah.
in school are mean.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, I introduced them early on to therapy and counseling. So that was a big help that they had someone to talk to. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I would say that the legal process, we didn't have to go to court. However, he didn't make it easy either. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he dragged his feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he dragged his feet. And also there were some threats, not safety threats, but it was just like, oh, accusing me of different things,
Yeah. Yeah.
gaslighting. It was just a a handful of things where um, had I not prepared myself,
Mm-hmm.
I do recall there were a couple of conversations where I actually lost it. I yelled back
Mm-hmm.
and I just said, this is, I said, I can understand we both can be angry, but we don't have to be mean to each other. And what you're doing right now is really mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I even said, I feel like I'm having emotional breakdown trying
Mm-hmm.
to trying to part ways in an amicable way. And I don't know what it is that is standing in the way. I don't understand if you get a lot of joy going through this pain, but this is really
Mm-hmm.
mean. I was
Yeah.
yelling at that point. I mean, I wasn't
Yeah.
calm like this, but and
Well, it's hard to remain calm in that situation. Like,
yeah.
yeah, right. So, so
But
that's that.
I think sometimes that was like an awakening for him. Is like, okay, I sometimes when you're calm about things, the other person, well, I can only speak. I wonder if my husband felt like I was in such control and
That you were calm. Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And
So
when
yeah.
I lost it, yeah, when I lost it into those two conversations, it just felt like he just kind of like, oh, okay,
Oh, yeah, she's serious and this is real. And it's so interesting. So we talk about this dynamic change, right? In marriage because like we carry this dynamic for so many years, right? For you guys, it sounds like you were always calm and collected and he was maybe more wave and his emotion is more
mhm,
volatile. And now you change that dynamic to really let your anger come out, whatever emotions you were showing. And he was like, oh, wow, this is so different. I got take it seriously. So that's like great sharing because we see a lot of people getting stuck in their divorce negotiation, just carrying that old same pattern or dynamic, right? And not changing. And you thank you for sharing also because even though you intended it to be amicable, and divorce can be really, really ugly. And so how did you, that seems like it's a dynamic change right there. How did you remain, how do I say, not always calm and collected, but collected throughout? How did you ride this wave when you went through this divorce negotiation process?
Uh, Lots of prayers. I mean,
Mm,
lots
mhm,
of prayers and meditation. Um, this came about, I moved out one day before the pandemic shut down.
mhm, mhm,
And because with the pandemic and having to work at home, I was thinking, there's no way that let me back up. It didn't seem like a healthy situation for me to be under the same roof with a person 24/7
mhm,
with the
mhm,
pandemic.
mhm,
And I prayed and I just talked to God. I said, this is the end result here. Show me the
mhm,
way on how
mhm,
this is going to work
mhm,
out,
mhm,
just light my path here. And so lots of prayers. And then before a conversation or interaction with him,
mhm,
um, I would really prepare myself to be grounded and almost to the point of writing down a soothing statement
mhm, mhm.
that I would mentally tell myself.
Yeah, to set your energy
Yeah.
to be grounded or to be whatever there for that. So yeah. So in all the negotiation, were you and him present and that's it, or was the lawyer present? Or for most majority of it, it's just you and him?
On the major
Hmm.
on the major meetings where it needed to have the lawyers there, um, and the lawyer was present. However, this dragged out to be an over the a 2 year over 2 years situation. And
Wow.
yeah,
So even if with your amicable approach and without children, it still took 2 years.
yeah, it
Wow.
took over 2 years just because when you're dealing with a person who comes from lack of and scarcity,
Yes.
um,
Yes. So true.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
he wanted to. It was a battle for him. He wanted to fight for things that he felt that he was owed. The world
Hmm.
owed him.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah.
was his approach. He even said it. He even these were some of his words that the world owed him. And so
Mm.
he was fighting for what the world owed him. And I said, if you come to if you come to a situation with that kind of mentality,
Yeah.
that is what
It's
that's what you're
yeah.
leading with.
It's so interesting you say that, the scarcity mindset. I mean, we all have it, right? We all have it. It's not just him, but especially in divorce. I remember at one point telling my ex the same thing. Um, I said, I can understand your, I mean, my situation is totally different, but today's not about my story. So I was the one who, he chose to leave. Even on the other side, I was really trying to protect our mutual benefits. And I can see that he's getting into that scarcity mindset, right? Because when people are just fighting all of the tiny piece and trying to be protective, I said, I can see that you see things as less and less because no matter how we divide this, it's gonna be less, right? Because together we're this is our whatever we have, and now no matter how you feel like you're gonna get less. I was encouraging him and to by saying that we got to shift the mindset to see it will be more, because you have the ability to make more and I have the ability to make more, right? Once we have a calm mind, amicable separation. It didn't get that way. That's another story because when you have that intention, not necessarily it's gonna be achieved. But that mindset is huge, and you can see when someone carry their behavior with that. Oh my God, I'm gonna get less and less. It's gonna be less and less, rather than when you said, "Oh, we're so lucky because we have so much abundance." You're approaching from that mindset. It's just other than the couple's dynamic, this is also a battle because you see things differently. Yeah. So,
And
yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
I don't think the term abundance meant anything to him,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, what do you mean abundance? You're ripping me off, you're leaving,
Mm-hmm.
you're abandoning, this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I I even took the term fairness off the table. It's about
Mm-hmm.
reasonable request. Is that
Mm-hmm.
request reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Because life is not fair to begin with. So that's not the approach I was taking. But is the request reasonable? And when you're talking about give and take,
Mm-hmm.
and it depends on the different types of assets that you're dealing with. So that's where the reasonableness came into play. And that was what was keeping me sane as well, because um, I this is funny how things turned out was almost exactly what I was praying for, in a
Mm-hmm.
way where I just said, um, I didn't care for the home, just because it had a lot of memories, and I did, I
Yeah.
wanted to start fresh. And he he's a homebody, so he felt very comfortable being in the home. So
Mm-hmm.
that was something that was a reasonable thing for me to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the real estate value the way it is, was that the right thing for me to do? Um, I didn't want to keep fighting. I didn't want to
Yeah.
keep being in this, and just that's not where my energy I wanted to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very, very important, right? This is what I encourage my clients is that know your non-negotiables in your negotiation. So for you, you achieved what you wanted because you were very clear what you wanted. But so many people going through this journey or process not knowing what they want. So they kind of just figure out, not even along the way, right? And that's the danger. And really another a better approach is, as you said at the get-go, really get clear, prepare yourself. That preparation is also knowing, and that's also part of knowing who you are, is what matters to you, and that what's worth fighting for. Um, so and like for me, my top priority was keeping the children in our matrimonial home because I really wanted to minimize the disruption to their life if they have to change schools, right? And at the time, um, having a newborn, I really like moving would be a lot of stress for me. So I think for other people who are listening, it's really, really very important to get clear of what are the top three things you must have out of this, and the rest and something that you can let go of, or maybe not get 100% of whatever that piece of pie is. Um, so yeah, that I just want to share. And also, I wanted to point out another thing that I get a sense that there was a lack of safety for you in the marriage. And you talk about emotional safety, but just in general, I had a sense that there's a lack of that. So that house in itself is not going to provide that safety. So did
Yeah,
I understand that? Yeah.
it was I just felt like um he's not accustomed to change, and it was going to serve the situation if the situation provided him some level of safety and comfort and familiarity,
Yeah.
so that he can then say, okay, you know what, that's a pretty good deal, if you will.
Yeah. For him, of what matters
Exactly.
to him. You were
Right,
considering from his like best interest as well.
right.
Like one thing, yeah, we talk about like in this negotiation, like looking at the interest, common interest rather than someone's position. Now we had a session last week talking about that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were still taking care of him to some degree, and in that sense, yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of that, if I and I kept asking myself that question, am I enabling this, or am I still being the provider? Because my end goal was to get this completed. That was my
Mhm.
end goal. What are the steps that's going to help me get there? Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and I tell you, um, I really truly believe that when your heart is pure, and that's why I didn't use the word strategy in a sense. When your heart is
Mhm.
pure on what it is that you want to see and envision this to be an amicable situation, that was where I was being led versus, oh, I'm going to trick him in thinking that, oh, you love that home, stay in it. You know, it'll be easy for you. That wasn't the words that were going through my
Yeah, yeah,
head.
yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah,
and
you were
granted,
truly, genuinely caring about him, knowing that he would love to stay, right? It would be better for him to stay, and it would be just better for him. So,
right. And some
and
people,
yeah,
yeah, I think some people fight just for the sake of fighting, you know,
yeah,
it's like, no, I don't want him to have that house. You know, I'm going to stick and
yeah.
even when they
And
don't
some
want the house.
people even use that as a threatening strategy, right? Oh, if you don't give me that, I will be, force you to sell the house, even though it doesn't make sense to sell the house. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you came from your heart. And then, so for people who are going through this very, I would say the most ugly phase of divorce is this divorce negotiation, dividing assets or parenting time, which usually takes more than a couple of months, and some longer even. And what would your advice um, do? What would your piece of advice to them to where they are right now, because it's very mentally draining and also financially draining, because to pay all of the legal fees, to in a lot of cases fight back and forth and on seemingly mm, sometimes not very big matters, but sometimes huge matters like parenting time or dividing a business. It's tough. It's all consuming, right?
Mhm.
It's hard not to ruminating and also feeling like you're putting your life on hold, just trying to complete this thing. And a lot of people I talk to, they're asking like, oh, when will this end? Like for people who haven't gone through this journey, it's very hard to understand, because divorce um, negotiation is so different than a business negotiation, but it's also part of it is business negotiation. So how do we, um, yeah, what advice do you have to give people who are in this thickness of divorce negotiation?
For me, I felt that making sure that the other person feels heard is
Mm,
important.
mm, mm,
Um, and it comes back to um, speaking up and talking about facts
Mm,
versus emotions.
mhm,
And even when you're feeling emotional, I mean, it's okay to say, you know what, right now I'm just really drained and emotional about this. I don't know if um, we're going to be able to make best choices at the time, at the moment. Keeping conversations open and connecting, like following up, So during the divorce negotiations, I had moved out.
mhm,
So the conversation was, okay, let's meet up every 2 weeks by phone or whatever the case is, um, and just have our agreements. You research that, I research this. Let's come back and just talk about. So we would have almost like a project plan, if you will,
mhm,
to keep going at that. And then once it just gets to the point where we're both drained, it's like taking a step back and to say, you know what, I feel we're getting really tired right now. I don't know about you, but I am. So I hear what you're saying. So let's just meet again. So making sure that the person feels heard. And I think that you got to follow with your gut. If you feel like you're being taken advantage of because you're the calm, cool, and collected,
mhm,
and in my case, I was the person who wanted this to be completed, just making sure that you're not being taken advantage of at that point. Because if I felt like I was, then
yeah.
and that would be when I would get the lawyer involved in it. And it's like, okay, here's more money. And I know money was a big deal for him. He didn't want to spend a penny. So all the lawyer fees actually I paid. And luckily
Mm,
we didn't exhaust that a whole lot, but money was a big deal to him. So I said, if we don't work this out, the lawyers are going to just take a whole big chunk out of this. So what do you want?
mhm. So knowing the others, what's the motivator is key. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna ask a tough one. Thank you for sharing that. So again, knowing the other side's interests and really um knowing where you can um sacrifice, right? Like in this case, for example, you paid the legal fee. I'm not saying everybody should, but
Mhm.
just knowing that where you can retrieve and when you need to move forward and be firm. And if you feel like it's I was going to say fair, but it's not reasonable, and you should get the lawyers involved. So I'm not sure if you've had clients like this when they're going through a divorce or separation, and the other side is completely not um, in any way of communication, right? It's either stonewalling or
Yep.
is either very violent or aggressive, verbal or sometimes even physical. And how would they deal with that situation when they wanted to be amicable, right? They still wanted to create that friendship or at least calm environment for the kids when they're co-parenting, or just even for themselves because of the time and history and they shared together. So what would you advise people in
Yeah.
that situation to do or not to do?
Right. You know, at some point in the beginning, he was stonewalling. You
Mm,
know, when you're dealing with a person who um, isn't emotionally, um, I almost call it arrested development. It's like, okay, I'm frozen. I've been giving this news and I'm frozen. I don't know what to do next. He was smart enough that, um, and my lawyer indicated that if we both participate and we both are collaborative and this and that, I don't need to get the judge involved. I mean, she said some of those things because she interviewed me and says, okay, what's his personality like? You know, I had to tell her that he had a temper and so some of those characteristics and behaviors, the attorney addressed it in the beginning when she served the paperwork and during the process when she was representing the meetings. So luckily he had a conscience to realize that if he doesn't collaborate, then he had to deal with the wrath of a judge.
Mm-hmm.
So your other clients who don't have conscience, if you will, um, I think that you have to get the bat out and play hardball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think you kind of hit it right on the head, is that knowing what's important for them.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have lost hope and they don't give a hoot,
Mm-hmm.
they don't care. And so they're going to make it as tough as possible. And I would tell you that the moment when things changed for me was when
Mm-hmm.
I was in deep forgiveness work. When I did
Mm-hmm.
deep forgiveness work, it shifted both of us.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just I wasn't just praying for myself. I mean, when you do healing for yourself, you're healing you're I believe that we're contributing to planetary healing. It shifted
Mm-hmm.
him
Mm-hmm.
because my the approach was different. I it wasn't there for he wasn't a battle for me.
Mm-hmm.
He was a battle for himself.
Yes. 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 Yes.
He was going against the flow, and I just said, "Do you like this?" You know, if you like this kind of emotions and this feeling and this battle, this personal misery path, that is yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's that when we truly let go and come from a place of the heart-centered approach, but also love, and things could shift, even if the other person is in such um, anger and ultimately agony, and trying to inflict certain pain maybe on you, but ultimately on himself, and not realizing that.
Yeah,
And yeah, and really there's nothing you can do about it but working on yourself, whether that's your belief, your development, or in the sense, forgiveness, and to really truly bring that consciousness back. Yeah, that's tough place to be, but but what grows.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of bizarre because my lawyer, I remember my lawyer said, "Oh my gosh, what changed? What shifted?" And I
Mm-hmm.
said, and she and I never really talk about spirituality, but but she was kind of like a typical lawyer, and I just said, in addition to prayer work and journaling, I did a lot of forgiveness work, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and I kept asking myself, how can I love my soon-to-be ex-husband 1% more each day?
Mm. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? In the beginning, I said, heck no.
Yeah, you have to be ready to go there as well. And
Yeah,
this is the time we don't know how long would that take, right?
yeah,
For us to fully let go and accept, and also come from a place of love. And the concept that I've been thinking a lot is that, I love you, but I don't have to be with you to love you. Like I can love you from afar, and that
yeah.
like bigger universal love. So yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And it's definitely not easy to get to that place, but it's possible. And the work lies in us and not the other party, because I hear my clients say that a lot. Oh, why couldn't that person do this? Why couldn't that person, if that person could be this, and we know we would be done. And certainly for sure. But yeah, the work is really on us. So thank you. I want to ask you, um, the last question, which is, or maybe the last two. So we talked about your advice to people who are in the thick of this. So what would your advice be to people who are in that place of should I stay or should I go? What would you tell them?
You know, in just especially with the folks who have kids, I did ask that question. Is that I said, you had this inkling for a reason. What
Mm-hmm.
gave you those feelings that you might that you are dissatisfied?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I'm actually working with a couple of people, is for the next 7 days, each day I would post a question for them,
Mm-hmm.
and then for them to journal their experience in the
Mm-hmm.
relationship. At the end of the day, give them a rating. At the end of the week, give it a rating. So the scale was 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the week, if you're more than 5, how do we get it to 10?
Mm-hmm.
If you're less than 5, how do you want to create a different relationship? What would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
So my advice would be is decide on what is a meaningful relationship. What does that look like? And I'm
Yeah,
sorry, the sun is coming through here.
it's okay.
Yeah, like what is a meaningful relationship, happy relationships, a relationship where you just feel like you are the queen and he's the king,
Mm-hmm.
or you're both queens. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Because it's about honoring both people. It's not just about you, or it's not just about me, but what would this, because when you're in a dysfunctional relationship, there is some level of dissatisfaction, but one is probably more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, so my
Mm-hmm.
advice would be is that decide on what type of relationship you want, and be conscientious and have that level of consciousness. If you make that decision, here are some of the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I say that is because I did make a conscious decision on staying status quo, because I had a lot of autonomy in my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I did the books, I had the financial outlook, and paid the bills, took care of the household. I really did all of that, and I had a lot of freedom in the marriage. And so I stayed in the marriage for a certain period of time because that was a decision I made, because I had a lot of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Then it got to the point where that freedom, and when I say freedom, is like traveling with my girlfriends, because I love to travel, and we didn't mess around or flirt or anything. It was just pure, really good girl friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that. I was able to go on retreats and stuff. So there was a period of time when I had a lot of freedom, and that was okay for me. Once
Mm-hmm.
that phase passed, it was like, okay, when I come home, I really don't have a partner at home. It's
Yeah.
like a roommate situation. Am I satisfied with that?
Mm-hmm.
So you go through different phases like that. That's why I think people are in limbo for a certain
Long.
long
Yeah.
period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the statistics is that it's probably an average of 7 years that they're in limbo, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly long. But um, but yeah, so I think it's working with someone on identifying what is an ideal relationship that gives you the most satisfaction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in talking about partnership, what's a meaningful, fulfilling partnership? What does it look like? Getting clear on that, right? First, when you say getting clear on who you are, what are your values, and then the next set of questions would be, what does a meaningful, fulfilling, and intimate life partnership look like for me? And then go from there. Yeah. Thank you. I want to ask the last question because I was listening to a podcast, and the idea is that so many things we focus on the not so good, right? So, and not realizing there is the other side, the good side of anything happening. So I want to wrap this up in by asking, what's the beauty out of this journey for you? What's beautiful out of your divorce journey?
It's such a level of excitement on what empowerment feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you can stand there and speak your truth,
Mm.
and the conversation didn't go well, but yet through unpeeling the layers, you continue to refine yourself. I'm still refining myself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so
I still can resonate. Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And and that's why I think God is really humorous and very compassionate at the same time. Um, it's just a beautiful, your life is like a dimmer light. It just keeps on lighting brighter and brighter and brighter as you continue to just keep taking those steps and have faith that things will work out. And it's when your faith is being tested that you can still find that unshakable faith to continue walking the path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why when I was in my corporate job, and especially in dealing with like potential sexual harassment, the person who feels like they were the victim, they're afraid to speak up. And when we work together and they're able to find their voice and stand there and speak up,
Mm-hmm.
I still get chills to think
Mm-hmm.
and they tell me, they said, oh my God, I didn't think that I could do that. I thought that I was going to die. But yet
Mm-hmm.
when I spoke those words, it was an incredible burst of energy that I was standing in my truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's not easy. I mean, it's not an easy path, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the work is on us to ultimately finding our voice again, and the truth walking is is it's tough, but so fulfilling and meaningful when we show up as who we are in any kind of context. And it's really empowering. And I can totally understand why you have chills, is that when people can see through and transition from that victim seat to be empowered, to be in that control, in that driver's seat of their life, it's that's the beauty there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to ask this question because podcaster asked, where can people find you, Lauren?
My LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me at the moment. Lauren Tran Ross. And the whole heart-centered approach is so it's so profound and powerful for me. That's why I wanted to make sure that it is part of my core and the name of my company. And then I was playing with my middle, actually my maiden last name. So it's not transformational with an S, it's transformational without the S. So I was kind of
Oh, I totally missed that. I added an S because I was like, oh, that makes sense because it's transformational. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so it just reflects a personal story behind the company.
Mhm.
And it's just I'm like your bestie. If you're facing separation or divorce or just trying to find clarity, I'm your bestie. So, but
Mhm.
my LinkedIn page is probably my best because that's kind of where more people have found me through that and through referrals.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay. Thank you again, Lauren.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.